Welcome to Healthy Lifestyle with Lori Anne. I am Coach Lori Anne, America's #1 take action success coach and strategist, empowering, educating, inspiring, and igniting people to take action with jet propulsion. We assist people to find and embrace their life purpose, live their highest vision, become the next best version of themselves, forging a strong foundation to soar to success. Find more information about how to work with me and my team. Visit us at ldcstrategies.com. Our goal here at Healthy Lifestyle, oddly enough, is to empower minds, educate hearts, inspire action, and ignite success so you can choose to have a fulfilled, healthy, emotional, spiritual, and physical life, to live the life you have always wanted and dreamed. Welcome to the show. I hope you're having a great day. Today on Healthy Lifestyle, we are going to give you some verbal caffeine to light you up with possibilities. And today on the show, we have Linda Pinckney. She is a certified holistic nutritionist and wellness coach and living in Pennsylvania. Her passion for providing clear guidance in food choices has led her to speak about the confusing and sometimes misleading regulation and labeling of food products in our beautiful United States. And her mission is to help people understand what food labels mean so that individuals can make informed choices about foods and their body needs in order to thrive. Welcome to the show, Linda.
Thank you so much, Lori Anne. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here. I am so excited about having this conversation today because it is something that I'm very passionate about. It's about bioengineering foods and the foods that we have out there and all the preservatives that our lovely FDA allow us to have in there and the chemicals and all this stuff that affect our health, right? So let's just start right from the beginning. Is how did you get involved in doing the work that you do, coaching, nutritional, and healthy living?
Oh, I was born on a farm in Western New York, and I was realizing really young that I was kind of the oddball. I ate all the natural food off, from the land, and, I seemed to be healthier than everybody else. And as I got older, looking around, I saw people getting so sick from things that should have been very curable. So I just developed an interest in what these food labels mean, how people view food itself. And I am a Reiki master. I've been a Reiki master for over 20 years. And the thing that always has been the common denominator among people is, I just eat whatever's in the grocery store. And
Yes.
come to find out, yeah, it's
Yeah,
tough.
we're going to talk about that today. So let's just start with the big elephant in the room, right? So how do bioengineered foods differ than healthy food?
Okay. We humans have been changing food for 10,000 years, a little bit at a time, but in Central America, the natives were crossbreeding maize, jicama, things like that. And those were the precursors of our corn, potatoes, tomatoes, whatnot. Eurasian herders were, selective breeding their herds to get the best animals, the most milk production, the hardiest livestock. So that continued for millennia. I mean, literally thousands of years, humans have been eating basically the same types of foods, and our bodies have evolved to assimilate those foods.
Right.
And so, none of this really changed until about the 1930s. Of course, at that time, we're looking at the Depression, we're looking at the Dust Bowl. There's a lot of turmoil in our country, and people just left their farms in droves, particularly in the Midwest. And people started to just kind of pick up wherever they were, eat the diet of wherever the place was that they lived. But that also created these huge cities of people who couldn't produce their own food anymore. Then, of course, World War II, 1950s, lots of technology came in. After World War II, that technology got switched over to agriculture. So now we have these sprawling farms. One thing that the Dust Bowl did was take people off of their own land. So, a lot of commercial farmers came in and just bought up all this free land. So that did kind of pave the way for a lot of the factory farms that we have now. And in addition to those larger farms that were coming up in 50s, 60s, 70s, we had this thing called the Green Revolution, and we started helping other countries improve their food. It's only really been since the 70s and 80s that there have been this real genetic changes in our food. After all of this cultural turmoil, suddenly the 70s and 80s were great. I can vouch for that, you know?
Me too.
Yeah, right?
Full disclosure, me too. Yeah. But
So
that's when bioengineering really became very prolific, right? Where they were engineering natural food products, whereas before they would come up and utilize the plants as they were. But they were finding the need to spread the wealth around, maybe found a dollar factor involved in that. And in order to be able to help other countries, and we'll put it in that nice light, in order to help other countries, they really needed to make sure that they had wheat that would be able to grow no matter what, right? So that bioengineering started coming through, which is absolutely brilliant to one extent, but not so much on another. So I know a little bit about flour. I'm a little obsessed on it, about the bioengineering of flour, that in England and Europe, flour, real flour, is 14 chromosomes. In America, our flour has been bioengineered to a point where it's 42 chromosomes. That's a huge difference. And the reason why is they needed and wanted to make it to be drought resistant. Well, let's just connect the dots for a second. What are we made of? Mostly
water,
yeah.
H2O, right?
Yeah, so drought resistant and a body made of water may not have assimilated properly, hence why we're seeing a lot more gut issues since the 80s. We see a lot of that leaky gut, you've heard that. A lot of people have that bloaty feeling. A lot of people are gaining weight from bad carbs. Flours doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad carb, right? But because of the way we bioengineered it, it's negatively impacting our body. Am I right on that? Am I hitting that nail on the head?
100%.
Yeah.
Between the changes in the bioengineered food and the changes in what types of chemicals we put on the land, our gut is so confused. Our body just hasn't caught up with it. And one thing I want to interject here, it's a little out of place, but it's important to know that the human body does not eat to feed itself. The human body is built to feed the microbiome in the gut. And those magical little creatures manufacture every single vitamin, hormone. They reprocess minerals so that we can use them. Very, very important. And you feed them and they feed you back.
Yeah. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. So what criteria would you use to define food for humans now?
Food for humans is actually pretty easy to define because people can only actually process about seven things as food. Okay, so we have air, water, carbs, proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals. That's pretty much it. So anything that kind of falls within those bounds, we can eat. The problem comes in more with perception of what constitutes food. You know, we have all of these choices, but your cultural background, for instance, influences heavily what you think you're going to eat.
Yeah, it does.
Absolutely, right? But there's also, now we have television and social media, and all of those messages are overwhelming.
They're bombarding us, yeah, without a doubt. Oh, by the way, flashback to the flour. Europe won't take our flour. Only third world countries will. And you ever see the pictures of humans from third world countries? They usually have that bloated belly and they're very, very thin. That's why it's not nutritious. They've sucked the nutrition out of our flour. And that's why our bodies are reacting the way they are. So we have to be careful of that. I also am aware of studies, and you can find this on the internet if you Google it. There are studies between how many chemicals our FDA allows and biochemical reactions, how much they allow here, chemicals in the United States, and how many they won't allow over in Europe. Europe, it's to the tune of, I believe it's 3,400 items they won't allow, they ban over in Europe. Here, 13. Hello. Big difference. Hello. So when it's FDA approved, we have to think about, what does that really mean? What are they not allowing or allowing? And you had mentioned something when we started talking about this before the show. You had mentioned something about what one serving means. And I was like, my mind just blew. And I was like, now that makes sense. Because I always had this question, Linda, like, what's the difference between 6 is bad and 7 is terrible, or 6 is good and 7 is terrible, or whatever the case may be? Like, who gets to decide, and what are the parameters to that? And you finally answered that question. So what are the parameters?
There's a couple of different things that I'm thinking on this. So if you're trying to eat a cookie, for instance, and the directions on the box say it's 1 serving, well, who's going to stop at 2 Oreos or whatever? No one's going to stop at 1 Oreo. Okay.
Seriously.
But another part of that is when we look at in terms of toxins, cyanocobalamin happens to be it's a cheaper form of vitamin B12, right? So 1 serving of that, this is how the FDA kind of looks at it, is 1 serving is what's not going to like hurt you or harm you or
Negatively
raise your
impact
blood
you in any
sugar.
way. Right.
Exactly. But what happens if, you've had Gatorade, which does have, I believe Gatorade has this in it. It's common in energy drinks anyway,
Right.
besides cyanocobalamin. So you have 1 serving of it there. In salt, all commercially produced salt, table salt, they have something called YPS, yellow prussiate of soda. It's less toxic because the cyanide is locked in iron molecules, but it's still, so maybe you've had 2 energy drinks, 3 servings of table salt, and maybe you had an energy bar or a protein bar.
Or 14 Oreos.
Right? So now you've had 6 servings of this stuff,
Right.
and we know that 1 serving is all the body can handle.
Right. So we're not layering all the food according to the FDA, according to their rigorous testing, tongue in cheek on that one, by the way. It's just based on 1 serving. And that's what blew my mind. I'm like, yes, this makes sense. It makes sense now that if you have 1 serving, it's okay. But if you have multiple servings, and you're more likely than not to have multiple serving, it's not okay. And over in Europe, the same cereal company, which I won't mention, because this is for all the cereal companies, so I don't want to just pick on one. And I'm not picking on anyone. I'm just informing people, is that this one company makes the same cereal over for Europe, England, France, Italy, Europe, and then for United States. And in one particular cereal, there's 5 pronounceable English language understandable ingredients in the one in Europe, to 27, same product made by the same company, 27, I'm not even sure how to pronounce half of it, what it is, and do I really care? In our cereal, same product made by the same company. So it's not like they can't make it that way. It's they're choosing not to, and they're making more money by using the chemical version. But what does that mean? They're also affecting our processing and what's happening to our food. So what happens when the body decides to digest something and it doesn't recognize it? It's like, what's this?
Exactly. And that's very common because of the chemicals, and each person's biochemistry is slightly different. So the body will take in whatever, say it's a cookie, it will extract all of the nutrients that it can, and maybe there's a sugar that it doesn't recognize, and it will take that little tiny molecule and it will stuff it inside of a fat molecule, and your body will use this tactic to protect itself. Okay, so it will stuff it in that fat molecule, seal it off from the rest of your body. It won't touch anything else. It's safe in there. Your body will not be poisoned by whatever or affected in any way, but it will be stuck in that fat molecule or that fat cell for an indefinite period of time.
It's stored. It's being stored, like stuffing it in a closet. So
Yes,
it just happens to be probably in our thighs, in our butts, in our stomachs, and in our arms, right? So that's what allows us to be heavier, right? Because we're storing it like a closet, because our body can't use it. It doesn't know what to do with it, right? So it's our
Yes.
body actually separates the things apart and says, this is good. It's like the team. I don't know if you remember, we're about the same age, I guess. Remember back in school when they used to have those science movies that they would have us watch, and they would have the teams and how like the heart would be communicating with the brain on like a phone thing, and these guys would run through and take care of something, and it's like, warning, warning, we need to go take care of it, and all these little men would be running in our body. That's the image I get, is that it's like, warning, warning, bubble this guy up and tuck it in the closet, is the image I'm getting, is what our body's doing when we're processing these processed foods with all these chemicals. That's what we're putting our body through, which also, by the way, leads to fatigue. Why, we become couch potatoes when we eat a whole bunch of cookies and things like that. Why the carbs are bad carbs. Carbs are important for us to have. You mentioned it in the 7 important things. Vegetables are good carbs, and there are carbs that are good carbs, but when it's biochemically enhanced, and does that include the gassing of our vegetables, where it's really not red, it's not a red tomato yet, and it has no flavor after they gas it, but it looks pretty in the market?
No, the strict definition of bioengineering, because that's really important. For a food to be bioengineered and have to be labeled bioengineered, it must contain a specific genetic sequence that is patented and approved by the FDA and USDA. And if that is noticeable or detectable via lab testing in the final product, only then does it have to be labeled bioengineered. So we know that our food has been changed through selective breeding, many, many millennia, okay? Could happen in nature. Even some of the GMO products, so to speak, could have crossbred. Some of those species could have crossbred in nature. And as you go farther to the other side of the spectrum, you have things that have been artificially, maybe eggs that have been artificially fertilized by a different type of, bird or something. So it gets more and more complex. And all along, pretty much since the 1970s and 80s, food manufacturers have had to disclose those changes. Contains a genetically modified food source.
Right.
Now that we're bioengineered, it's only got to be labeled in that one little sliver.
Yeah.
And it can be deceptive.
Yeah. Misleading, deceptive. Yeah. And we have to be educated. And that's the point for today, is to educate you to know what to look for. So they can alter like the flour, they can alter it, and they don't have to necessarily, unless it meets these specific sequence and patent things for the FDA, they don't necessarily have to label it. That doesn't mean it's not that way. An example of that is in essential oils. I know for a fact that you could label an essential oil pure, and all they have to have is, wait for it, 5% of that actual essential oil in it to be listed and utilize the word pure. There's different definition of organic. There's different definitions of pure. What you really need to know and understand is where this is being manufactured, how it's being manufactured. It's really important to understand that before you ingest it or put it on your body, because anywhere along the line, even though it's FDA approved, doesn't mean that other item that's not FDA approved isn't good for you or isn't bad for you. It just means it is what it is. So research is important, right?
It is. And, if you look at food labels now, they're actually, the FDA has allowed food companies to use tiny, tiny labels and only put a QR code or the company's phone number on there, instead of saying actually in English contains a bioengineered ingredient.
Yeah. That to me sounds like gaming it. It's like, okay, we're going to do something and we're going to kind of hide it, and we're going to say this is okay, and it's not okay. And some people would say, well, there's not a lot of room on the product, to the packaging, to put things like that. To me, that's an excuse. That's just, you'll find a way. If it's important enough to get the product out, make the package bigger. I don't know what to tell you. But does bioengineering mean it's not food?
Not necessarily. I mean, some people will be able to eat these and really, consume them, no problem. And it just depends how your body reacts to it. So be mindful of what you're eating and just be informed
Yeah,
and
yeah.
watch.
I want to circle back to this. You're listening to Healthy Lifestyle with Lori Anne. We're going to take a short break. Let's come back to the definition of bioengineered and what qualifies as food and what maybe we shouldn't look at as food, even though they might put the food name on it. So we're taking a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Healthy Lifestyle with Lori Anne. I am Coach Lori Anne. If you would like to be a guest, lift up your business, product, not-for-profit, or if you have a question or comment, we would love to hear from you. Email us at healthylifestylewithla@gmail.com. That's healthylifestylewithla@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. So just reach out to us. We'd love to accommodate, bring people on that you want to hear about. Let us know. Welcome back. Today we're speaking to Linda Pinckney. She is unbelievable expert in holistic nutrition. She's certified in it. You're just so knowledgeable. Linda, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Awesome to be
We
here.
just left off talking about, does bioengineering mean it's not food? How do we know? Like, what do we look for, Linda? What should we do? I'm so confused. I was taught by somebody, just shop the exterior of the food store. That's your safest place to be, because all the stuff inside is really has heavy chemicals and is heavily bioengineered.
I'm going to qualify that. I'm going to say you always need to be careful because say you're a cheese manufacturer and you go and buy goat's milk to make your cheese. Well, it may be that that goat has been bred with a genetic material from perhaps a yeast, and that genetic code makes the flavor of the milk better. We'll pick something out of the air.
Yeah.
All right. So you get your milk, you process it, you ferment it, you age it, and you package it. All right. So you send it to the lab and it contains 0 bioengineered ingredients. Well, you know that it came from bioengineered stock, but there is no bioengineered DNA sequence in your fermented, product, in your final product.
Yes, yes.
So therefore, you do not have to label it. Nothing. No one would ever know.
Yeah. Except for
it's legally, it's fine.
does that really hurt you? Does it really hurt you to have a bioengineered sheep produce that milk?
We haven't been doing this long enough to know.
Got it. But I think it should be fully disclosed so we can make the decision.
Absolutely.
I always feel uncomfortable when information is held back, so I can't make an informed decision on it. And that's what we're talking about, being able to make an informed decision. It's okay if you like your chemicals, God bless you, and preservatives. It's okay if you that makes you happy and you enjoy it. What's not okay is the medical situations that happen as a result. And again, it's your choice. No different than if you decide to smoke or not. Not that I'm condoning smoking and the benefits of it or the lack of benefits of it at all. But I'm just saying it's a choice whether or not you want to do that. But you understand that there are side effects and they may be very, very detrimental. When we're not given that information, we don't know that this is detrimental to us. And we're not given that choice. The choice is taken away from us.
Absolutely. And one of the things that happens is that if you have a child, for instance, that's eating it, maybe your whole family had cheese and crackers and you have 3 kids, 2 of them did great. The adults loved it. They thought it was the best stuff ever. But one child got a really bad stomach ache. They were sick and, had to go to the doctor. Well, the doctor would probably find the cause of their stomach ache inconclusive.
Right.
Okay. So what's a parent to do? How do they know where that stomach ache came from?
Right.
Okay. And food companies understand this very clearly and regularly use this information to kind of evade responsibility for a lot of the health issues that happen.
Yeah. Without a doubt. There's a lot of complications that can happen with that. So what potential complications do you see with the practice of bioengineering? What are you seeing?
specifically a lot of obesity, leaky gut syndrome, type 2 diabetes, and all of these are based on inflammation and oxidative stress. So these are diseases of, we normally see them as diseases of age, but these things are now occurring in people younger and younger.
Yeah.
And teenage children are really struggling right now with all of the different types of foods, types of messages. They don't have the type of filter that an adult has. They can't make the same level of decision that an adult can. So they're eating these foods because the TV and their friends are eating them, and maybe their friends do great on it, but they get really sick. So it's very difficult to know where it came from, what the culprit is. And the poor mom and dad, they have to run the kids to and from sports and school and hold down jobs and pay the mortgage. Do you really have time to stop and check the QR code on every single product that you bring home from the store? Should you have to?
No, you shouldn't have to, but there is this great app called Yucca, Yuka. Oh my gosh, that is so terrifyingly wonderful. The reason why it's terrifyingly wonderful is you realize when you hit the QR code on the package, it tells you the level between 0 and 100 of where it stands. Anything under 50, you should probably never put in your mouth again. And it tells you why, what products are in it, why it's rated that way, and gives you alternatives to that product. So it's a beautiful app. I love it, love it, love it. It's not the answer. I think there are better answers, but for now, it's a really good tool for busy moms and dads, because why are we using all these preservatives and why are we using all these chemicals is because the manufacturers want to be able to keep it in a warehouse for a long period of time. I happen to have chickens, so I get fresh eggs all the time, and it's wonderful. I'll share them with you, Linda. But the eggs in are refrigerated. I don't refrigerate my eggs for my chickens. I keep them on the counter, and I can keep them for a couple of months. Not that they last that long in my house, but I could keep them for a couple of months. Well, what they do when they're bringing eggs in is they keep it that way. Then as soon as they wash it, and in a lot of cases they bleach it to be white. So now they're using a chemical, right? And that's impacting it. And they keep it for months, sometimes years in warehouses before we even see it in the grocery store. So when you're looking at things like that, you're like, oh my gosh, that's why we have all these chemicals, so that they can have shelving lasting capability. There's positives and negatives to that. And that again is not allowed in Europe. That is why they are very thin. They are thinner than Americans, right? They don't really, even though they have fast food companies over there and they eat that periodically, their food is a lot cleaner. Even the fast food companies change their products over in Europe because they are required to. They are not allowed to have the chemical compounds that we're allowed to here. So I really want everybody to consider and be mindful of what's happening out there. It's really, really important for you to take that under consideration. I mean, now that I've learned all this, I feel terrible because I fed my kids this stuff. I was like, yeah, it's fine. I didn't know. So we're bringing it to your attention. Linda and I are bringing it to your attention, more so Linda, because she is just a wealth of knowledge, bringing it to your attention so you can have this information and make informed, educated decisions. And those complications from the gassed vegetables and fruits, from the biochemical and engineering, from all the other chemicals that our FDA is allowing, is not okay. It's not okay because it's associated with our health. And we can go into a whole nother episode about our medical system. Now, listen, do I think Western medicine is brilliant because it can fix things very acutely? Absolutely. But there's a reason why Eastern medicine has been around as long as it has. It tones, it continues to keep our body on the front end healthy. And I am questioning these days of whether or not that is the mission of our medical field and our food supply chain. Is their mission to keep us healthy, or is their mission to not keep us healthy? So those are the questions that I'm throwing out there, not asking you to answer unless you have the answer, because I'd really love one. But I'm seeing that those are the things that are out there. Do you see that? Is this along the alignment of what you're talking about and what you're saying?
This is exactly it. We are looking at a food system that is benefited by scarcity or the appearance of scarcity. So messages get released in the media about scarcity. Is that story real? I don't know.
Right.
I'm at a period where I'm questioning everything I consume, whether it's media,
Me too.
messages, right?
Yeah.
Or food or medicines. And I see a lot of people really backing away from all of those things.
Yeah. Because they're all toxic in one level or another. And if we don't have the answers and we can't process it, we actually have to do our own research. So I will say on any of those subject matters, do your research. Don't just take what somebody says. That is not okay. That is not making an informed decision. That's making what we refer to fondly in our industry as a sheep decision, which means we're just going to blindly follow along and do it because it's easier. Yeah, it is easier. We also get inundated. And I always say, so what's a belief? What's a belief? A belief is a thought we think over and over again. So if you hear a commercial over and over and over and over and over again, it actually becomes a belief and you're like, oh, this is a good product, or this is not a good thing, or this is a good thing. It's because we see it over and over and over again. They do it with purpose. And matter of fact, you have some great information that I would love you to share about how all these companies, medical, food companies, oil, how they're entangled. So do
Oh
do
gosh.
do your magic, girl. This was
Oh my
a
gosh. Okay, so when this country was formed, certain interests in Europe heard of this stuff in southern Western New York called Seneca oil.
Mm,
Okay, and they wanted to get their hands on it because it truly is healing. In fact, the one little plot of ground where this oil spring exists, the Seneca have kept it in every single one of their treaties. It's 160 square acres in Cuba, New York, and they are not letting it go, trust me.
yeah.
But that's down near Morton Salt Mines,
Yeah,
also
sure.
in New York
Yeah.
State, right? So eventually, through war and all sorts of machinations, the oil industry did appear, and it was used primarily for fuel, as it still is. But what people don't understand is that the natural oil that bubbles up through the ground and makes like this scum on top of ponds is very healing. It has a lot of actual medicinal purposes.
Right.
So after, a certain company had come into this country and by the mid to late 1800s had built this oil empire and used it to fuel the steel industry and transportation industry and the travel industry. So we're going to bring in the Rockefellers, the Biltmores down in Vanderbilts rather, and the Carnegies, all right, and Pennsylvania Railroad as well. They started to build medical schools. So why? We don't know, except this guy over here, this Rockefeller guy, he knows. So we have Rockefeller University putting out doctors and Carnegie Mellon and Vanderbilt down in Tennessee. And all of these companies now, a lot of the oil companies eventually owned tobacco companies. Some
Right.
that were highly invested.
Right.
Okay, so now we have doctors who are all taught to prescribe drugs based on petroleum products. They're all taught to treat all medicine as an emergency. So you have to use the most invasive treatment possible.
Right.
It's how they're taught.
Yes. Yes.
And now you've got people smoking products that are, they get involved in the communication industry because they're trying to promote their drugs and their, prescriptions and their services and their all
Right.
kinds,
So we're talking communication industry. That's the
yeah,
media, right? We're talking
right.
about pharmaceuticals. We're talking about tobacco companies. We're talking about food supply chains. We're talking about methodologies to move that food supply chains around. And we're
Yes,
talking about education. All of these are mingling with each other and owned by practically the same companies.
they are.
Yes.
And if you'll notice in the 1990s, when the cigarette companies they were getting sued a lot and they had to change their tactics. Who did they buy out? R.J. Reynolds bought out Nabisco. So RJR Nabisco. And if you think about the Oreo and that addictive little white cream that's in it, these masters of addictive science have been let loose on our snack food. So it's no secret that snack food is highly addictive. There's a component in the white cream in a lot of snack foods. It's not the only one. I don't mean to pick on them. All of these
I
scientists
love
try to find
Oreos.
chemicals that hit, right? That hit the TAS1, I think it's the R2 taste receptor at the back of the tongue. And it's important to know that taste receptor because it's the one that is hooked directly to your reward and pleasure centers in the brain. So every time you eat an Oreo, you get a little shot of dopamine. Well,
Yeah.
there's no real true nutrition in an Oreo. So your body feels like it's still hungry and your brain just got a reward for eating this thing. So you eat more of it. And this is the
Which means they
exact,
sell more, which means they make more money. And again, as a business coach, take action business coach, I absolutely support people making money without a doubt. But at what cost?
when I was in high school, just to back up a little bit, my dad told me, because I wanted to do radio and television. What you're doing, that's what I wanted to do always. Television is nothing but a brainwashing mechanism. And I thought he was just the most crazy, insane person I had ever met in my life.
I get that because my mom used to call it the boob tube. So yeah,
Right?
without a doubt, they knew that it was a mechanism in order to get certain messaging out there. Some people may call it the propaganda box.
I would suggest if your listeners would like more information on it, to look up patents for a method for conveying amplitude and frequency modulated signal across distance. It's worded something to that effect.
Okay.
And it does spell it all out.
Of what the television was about what
Yes.
media is about. Yeah. Well, media is about repetition. And that's why they always say, you want to buy it in blocks and the more you're out there. And we also call it spray and pray because they don't know who they're talking to. So they're just talking to anybody who'll listen. If you happen to be on at that moment, you're going to get that. And we even saw a lot of that repetition, especially during the pandemic, continually sending that messaging over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, where people would just believe it because they heard it so many times that it had to be true. And who has time while you're trying to raise a family, have a job, do a gazillion things that we're doing to do research of whether or not this is harmful? That's why I always say, when you're feeling bad and you're watching the news, shut it off. Shut it off. Nobody needs to be in that place. And if it's a piece of information you need to get, don't worry, it will get to you. It always does. It always does. Somebody always says, "Hey, did you hear about blah, blah, blah?" And I'm like, "No." And they tell me whatever it is. And I always get the information that I need. So, again, just turn off those TVs. Don't turn off radio shows because they're really informative like this one. No, I'm only joking. Be careful what you intake, not only food, but what you're looking at, what you're intaking through your eyes, what you're taking in through your ears, what you're taking in through your nose. Every form of intake is important and you have control over the decisions you make. We were talking about this in the last few minutes. We were talking about the power of the purchase, but you had a different kind of power that you talked about, that is really you choose what food you can put in your mouth, right?
Well, it's the power of purchase, but the power of consent. You purchase it, you consume it, you have consented to whatever it is the food companies have put in this product.
Right.
If you revoke that, you are voting against a bioengineered product, a genetically modified product, a super sugary product, a whatever it happens to be.
Right.
You have the power.
Right. And you
Because
send a
if you
message
don't pay
back.
attention, they have nothing.
That's right. Well, they're looking at, oh, it's selling really well. We're making lots of money. Let's keep doing it. But if they're not making lots of money, they discontinue the product. So just think about that when you're making choices, is that you have a power, one person at a time. If we all made powerful decisions like that, just think of the messaging we can send back to the companies and saying, no, we're not going to take this. That's why essential oils suddenly started coming in because they couldn't beat the essential oil companies. They were just powerful enough and people were buying it and they were like, I'm jumping on that bandwagon because we're losing part of the market. That's all they look at is market percentage. And when they saw they were losing part of the market, these big companies said, oh, we're going to put lavender in our cleaners, and we're going to put lavender in your fabric softener, and we're going to put lavender in your scents and your fake scents. And just remember, if it says fragrance, it's not really a pure, it's a manufactured. Fragrance and scent is manufactured. In the last minute, what kind of food choices would you suggest people set and start doing and eat?
Sure. Always, always go for the least processed. I like an 80-20 program, okay? 80% raw food, 20%, whatever else. It's all right. Your body can handle a little bit of healthy mediocrity, okay? But 80%, your fruits and vegetables, your fermented foods, the kimchi, the cheeses, the yogurts, is just as clean as possible.
I love cheese,
8%.
love cheese, love cheese. Yeah, I love it. So the action taking today is really be mindful of your food and take in products that are very as clean as you can possibly get. If you don't understand the definition of that, I would love you to reach out to Linda. She is a wealth of knowledge. Manifestwellness.us is her website. But more importantly, and great news, listeners, we're going to have Linda on and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into these conversations, what the different companies are doing. We're going to dive and give you and empower you with information to allow you make better choices for you and your family. Linda, you are magnificently wonderful and so informative.
Thank you. I hope everybody will gain a little something from this and start making those powerful purchase decisions.
I love that. Absolutely fabulous. And because we talked about cookies so much, I want one now. But thank you all for joining us today on Healthy Lifestyle with Lori Anne. I hope we earned the privilege of your time. I really want to thank our guest today, Linda Pinckney. Just so wonderful. Look for our show next Saturday at 3 p.m. on JVC Broadcasting and iHeartRadio. We also can be found on all the major platforms and would be so grateful if you please like, follow, share, and subscribe. And please take a moment to join our Take Action community, where you will interact with like-minded individuals and have access to tools, giveaways, challenges, and other yummy stuff. Until next time, I am Coach Lori Anne, America's #1 Take Action success coach and strategist. Let your dreams be bigger than your fears and let your life be filled with joy. Have a great week. See you next week. Take care.